He was a great resource to me a few years ago when I was working on a little book that I wrote. And I have to tell you, in my industry, I'm a financial planner. In addition to doing my work with NewtoAtlanta, there are a lot of people that reach out to estate planning attorneys like Adon, and oftentimes they're trying to solicit business. So I can completely understand why Adon would have been a little skeptical with some random financial advisor coming into his office and asking about his business. But I was very thankful that Adon, was graceful and took the time to talk to me, despite that risk of me being some guy that was just trying to bug him about getting business. I had a great conversation with him, and that time that we spent talking about a few estate planning concepts helped me to move forward with this book, which was about charitable giving. So thank you for that, Adon.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. It was great to have the excuse to meet you, so I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I'll start with something that has been in the news recently that I would love to get your opinion on. I saw that you posted about the Lisa Marie Presley situation, and I think that's a great reminder for a lot of people that if you do not do something to plan for when you're gone, you may create a big mess for your family. And I know, with the Presley estate, that must be incredibly complex, but I'm sure you can speak to other examples where people didn't do anything and it created a big mess. You want to say something about that?
Yeah, so we think the Presleys, they're this big wealthy family. They should have had lots of advisors helping them, but it was something very simple actually in that case that really affects us all. It's not really just for the super wealthy, if you will. It really goes to everybody where the deceased person in this case had what we call a trust document that was going to manage her affairs after she passed. And there was some sort of amendment that people are claiming she did. And it wasn't, it wasn't done with all the formalities needed. There was some contradictory words in there. And now, her mom is now challenging her trust that her children were going to be in control of, beneficiaries of. And it really just goes to, it was kind of a simple thing that she put out there. She wanted to make a little bit of a change to what she had done in the past, but not going through the proper formalities is probably going to cost everybody a lot of money. And, if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of money, these simple formalities may cost you a little bit up front, but it really helps to kind of protect and save your money, your family and your money on the back end.
Exactly. I mean, something that might have cost, $1,000 or a few $1,000s is now going to probably cost the estate millions in legal fees. And I think the other thing that I take from that is it's the mother. It's her own mother that's challenging this now. So don't think that because you're close with your family that some of these things and some of the challenges that come up won't even be from your closest relatives, because when large sums of money are involved, things sometimes get complicated. And so make sure that you have an attorney that's really got things together for you. I'll come back to that maybe later. One of the things that I also wanted to talk to Adon about, because NewtoAtlanta, and specifically here in Atlanta, NewtoAtlanta helps people with, is they help people that are moving to cities or thinking about moving to cities to get connected to professionals that can help them. Attorneys are obviously a big part of that, and it's particularly important when you move from one state to another because the laws change, and sometimes the planning that you've done in I don't know, we'll say California, may not be relevant here in Georgia. Can you speak to that for a moment? Give an example, maybe.
Yeah, sure. So when someone's new to the state, we usually, from a legal side of things, ask them kind of what they've done in the past, and how do we get them updated. If you're coming to Atlanta, to Georgia law, for example, we've seen over the last couple years a tremendous amount of movement from other states, and the laws are slightly different. They're slightly nuanced. Sometimes, you're coming from a state where the laws are similar, and every state essentially will respect the laws of another state. So if you did your will in, Chicago, you come down here, Georgia will respect that will for sure. The problem is there's sometimes little nuances that maybe your will in Chicago didn't have for Georgia law. For example, one of those would be, some of the statutory rights that we have in Georgia. We call it years support. It's a right that, surviving spouses and can claim against the estate, whereas another state may not have it. You always want to waive that right in your Georgia will, essentially, depending on your planning. I don't want to speak out of turn, but that's just something that, little nuances that can hold you up in the court, not waiving bonds or insurance or those types of things. So sometimes those documents have what's needed. And we just say, let's just update it and say Georgia law applies. Sometimes it's just very practical. Maybe your will or trust works in Georgia, but now your powers of attorney are not familiar with your local doctors, with the banks, those types of things. So from a practical perspective, your power of attorney, your medical directive, documents that allow people to act on your behalf if you're incapacitated, which are very important. Maybe it confuses the bank when you show up to the local bank down here that you had a California power of attorney and they don't want to talk to you. So from a practical perspective, we highly recommend getting your powers updated. From the legal side, always good to revisit your will and trust. And, I'd say the third aspect of that is if you're coming from a state that had community property laws, like Zack mentioned, California, Texas, Nevada, some of these other states, that's really when you should definitely reach out to an advisor and kind of drill down a little bit more on how your assets are held, how they're going to be affected by moving to a state that doesn't have community property anymore. Does it retain its character from the old state? So there's I think about 6 to 7 states right now that still have community property laws versus everyone else is more on, kind of the common law system, as we call it, which in Georgia, that's what we're on. So, just some subtle nuances and, really just trying to build your team around you when you come to a new state.
Right. What are some other situations that you think people should, besides moving, what are some other situations that people should think about coming to talk to an estate planning attorney?
Well, if you don't have an estate plan, then you should talk to one.
Well, that's
we're biased. Yep. We are biased. But I would say either you don't, if you're a younger couple, you don't have something. Usually we see, when you have that first kid come along the way, you really want to make sure you have something in place. You're a guardian, something happens to both parents. You want to make sure minor children are protected and taken care of with guardianships and potential trust planning for those minors. And then we do say, like, kind of life events or tax law changes. Those are good triggers for when you maybe want to review or update your planning. So life events, marriages, divorces, potentially liquidity events if you're about to sell a business or something else that, you may have a big, event coming. So it's really just trying to make sure that your documents are growing with you. And as life happens, that you make sure they're updated.
Right. special needs children would be another one.
Yeah, definitely. If you got a special needs child, you need to make sure very carefully that your documents are drafted in a way where any inheritance going to that child would not disqualify them from governmental assistance, which can be so important. Even the smallest amount could really be a negative effect on their situation. And sometimes there's lifetime planning you can do with that. Another situation is for elderly folks, similar, where you're trying to do some Medicare, Medicaid type planning, where you're getting
Right.
to the situation where you're relying on those dollars, and maybe you have a home and a couple accounts, and it's going to disqualify you from some aid. So there's some things that you can do to try and ensure that you insulate some of those benefits.
Mm-hmm. I know, I mean, just because we had had some talks about charitable planning before, and the book that I mentioned before, that Put Your Giving Where Your Mouth Is book, is focused on charitable concepts and specifically being able to use charitable lead concepts, the charitable lead trust, for people with opposing views to challenge each other and do good for charity at the same time. So I know you do some work with charitable planning. Do you want to speak to that for a minute?
Sure. Obviously it's great to do good and help out where you can. Fortunately, the government is incentivizing you to be charitable with tax breaks and
Exactly.
deductions that you get. So when it comes to charitable planning, there's obviously different levels. You could, work with someone like Zack and set up a donor advised fund. So, a way to kind of do some annual giving, and those funds, last for a number of years where you don't have to necessarily give the money away right away.
Right.
So if you have a big event coming up and you want a big donation, charitable donation, you could stick it in the donor advised fund, and then over a number of years, give out that money.
Right.
And then we have, two big concepts would be a charitable trust, and there's kind of, the two of them are charitable lead trust, we call them, charitable remainder trust. The lead trust essentially allows you to set up this trust where a charity gets an annuity, essentially an income stream for a number of years, and then the remainder, if there is any, can go to your children, for example, tax free, which is a nice benefit. You can sometimes get an income tax deduction upfront on that type of trust. The charitable remainder trust is where you actually can retain that income stream. You flip it, and at the end, it goes to the charity. With charitable planning, you often see that when you have a big liquidity event coming up, you can get ahead of that
Right.
event. There's ways to put the assets potentially in the trust or the donor advised fund ahead of time, avoid a lot of the gain or almost all of it on the funds being held by the charity. There are some nuances as far as what the charity can hold and potential tax that they may have, but essentially, if you do have that event coming, it's always great to talk to someone like myself or Zack or a CPA.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of get in front of them. And there's just so much good you can do with the charitable planning. The other, concept I'll throw out there is the private foundation. You hear about that a lot. But really that donor advised fund, which is, an account that you set up at an institution that's charitable, can kind of replace that foundation concept. It kind of gives you your own mini foundation. If you don't have,
Right.
Bill Gates money to put into a foundation, you can kind of
Right.
set up your own little
Right.
one. And a fun fact about the charitable lead trust, which we mentioned about, which Zack brings about in his book a lot, which is great. Most of the Kennedy family wealth was designed and put into charitable lead trust. So a lot of the land out on Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard, or I may be getting the geographic location wrong, but a lot of that land and a lot of their wealth was put into charitable lead trusts, meaning they got a deduction up front, the charities got to benefit, and now the families, as we know, are living off of that land, and it's come to them in a very tax efficient manner. So,
Absolutely.
so
And
a
my
fun,
understanding
fun
is that,
example.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying a fun example, maybe a level of wealth that not all of us can fathom, but we can pare that back for most of us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the lead trust is it's particularly interesting to me. But one of the other things that's unique about it is, my understanding is you do not have to have the funds in there for 20 years in a lead trust like you might in a remainder trust. So that's unique, and it may lend it to be a good tool for some special situations that we're talking about. Let me ask you, if you are talking to that business owner that is thinking about selling a business, or they are certainly going to need to talk to someone like yourself to plan, but what level of planning? I mean, if somebody does not think they're necessarily, they don't think their situation is maybe complex enough, or they don't think they have enough money, at what level do you think somebody needs to start talking to someone like yourself?
Really, I mean, again, I'm biased, but once you've accumulated some assets, you really do need to start getting your affairs in order. A lot of times you can potentially deal with those assets, like with beneficiary designations or joint ownership. So if something happens to you, there is kind of an automatic disposition of those assets via those accounts. But it's not a high barrier of entry to kind of talk to someone like myself. I personally will always just talk to people and have a conversation. If it doesn't materialize, it's no problem. It's always good meeting new people. But really, if you buy a house or you start getting some bank accounts, maybe some life insurance, as you start acquiring a few things, you've got to speak to where those assets are going to go if something happens.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not just about taxes.
Right. It's really not about taxes until you get, to a level of wealth that's, higher than most of us have, but it's
Right.
practical. You're trying to protect your nest egg. You're trying to protect your family or the heirs that you leave behind and not create a mess for them, essentially.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's something that families should do just because they love their family. Good stuff. Well, Adon, tell me, what are you doing when you're not being a lawyer?
I'm chasing after three, not little girls anymore, young girls, I would say.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, my wife and I have three daughters, twins that are almost 10, and then a 5-year-old who are very into competitive dancing. So I spend a lot of weekends as a dance dad, as you would call me. I don't quite have the t-shirt yet, but I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah. Girl dad. That's super cool. I heard someone say once that it's all fun and games until there's more kids than parents, because then you can't do man-to-man coverage anymore. Then it goes to zone, so it's much tougher.
Yeah, we're definitely in zone coverage, but they're good kids. They let me get out and occasionally go to some Georgia football games. So they let me have my time away from all the girly stuff. But
yeah,
it's great. I wouldn't have it any other way. But I would say the family keeps me the most busy. And like I said, trying to get to some football games, maybe a little golf here and there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, good stuff. Well, we'll have to go play sometime. And it's certainly been a good few years for your Georgia Dogs. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, we're riding high right now, so we'll take every minute of it.
Okay, very good. I hope my Virginia Tech Hokies can get there one day. It's looking like it might be a little while, but anyway, Adon, I really appreciate the time you took to get together today. It's been a lot of fun. I think it'll be informative for the audience, and hopefully we can help you to get connected with some of those people that are moving to the Atlanta area.
Yeah, happy to just be a resource for you, for any of the audience. Like I said, it doesn't hurt to just pick up a phone and chat to someone. So it was great having, I appreciate you having me on. It was great to chat with you and always connect.
Very good. And again, how would they contact you, Adon?
You could, go to our website, I guess. Our law firm is Fox Rothschild. So foxrothschild.com, just put in my name, and all my contact details be up there, or you can find me on LinkedIn, or I'm not sure if in the how you put out the video, I can certainly give you all my contact details there too.
Well, we'll make sure to put it out there. And again, I appreciate you taking the time to connect.
Yeah, thank you.